Hello and welcome to our training about the transactional model of communications. In previous sessions, we talked about what communication is, what an audience is, the requirements of a relationship, the Joe Hardy window, what listening is, communication competence, and the NAPS relationship. Communication is an audience-based centered phenomena, and audience being the person or persons you want to communicate with. Listening can be defined in various ways, but most likely being the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process. Communication competence is the ability to interact well with others, and the NAPS relationship illustrating the steps needed for people to come together and part effectively.
Communication is a transactional process that requires a simultaneous give and take and receiving and sending of messages back and forth between at least two individuals. One way to better understand this way that communication works as like a simultaneous process would be through the transactional model of communication. The transactional model of communication is a way to illustrate how conversations take place, and it makes it easier to see all the different moving parts going on at the same time, because there has to be a sender and their message and a receiver and their feedback, along with everything going on in the space around them, the context of the situation, whether that be physical context or mental or what have you, and then like the type of channel that the message is being communicated through. So whether that's texting or face-to-face, the transactional model of communication helps to illustrate the process and make it a lot easier for people to understand.
To create the transactional model, you're going to start with a speaker. This one is called Timmy. And then you're going to add a listener. This one's name is Amy. The speaker sends a message to the listener, and then the listener produces an answer, called feedback. The method in which the message and feedback are exchanged is called a channel. Communication happens in context, which is the social situation in which the communication is happening. This is not always an easy process, as interference can distract either party from what is happening in the conversation.
So in every conversational situation, there will be a speaker and a listener, and usually the speaker will send a message to the listener, and the listener will process said message and then respond to the original speaker, making the listener the new speaker and the old speaker the listener. So they're kind of flippy-floppy.
So channels are the method in which the message and the feedback are being exchanged. So something like whether that's face-to-face or through a text conversation or email, or something like a phone call or a letter, things like that, or a poster on a wall. Wherever there is some sort of message being sent out, there is some form of channel involved. Things like social media could be considered a channel as well. And when you're kind of dealing with different channels, it's important to keep in mind the environments of each. Like you would communicate different things on different ones. So like you wouldn't, text someone to tell them that their dog died or something. That's something you would have in person. I would hope. Channel is also important because people might be more inclined to communicate in certain ways in other types of channels than not. When you're texting, you don't have the ability to use like change your tone of voice, or you don't have a lot of the nonverbal cues that you would have face to face. So the way you communicate through that would be different. You have to add in like emojis, things like that. You wouldn't say something sarcastically that could be taken super seriously when you're trying not to do that. You wouldn't do that over text. You would save that for like something where at least your voice could be heard or you would be seen.
Interference can be a lot of things. So basically, interference happens when a speaker gets outside thoughts or feelings or noises from the world around them or their brain. Interference can affect a lot of things within two people conversating. Interference can distract a speaker from adequately getting their message across to the listener. Interference can also cause the listener to fail at picking up what the speaker is trying to tell the listener.
The transactional model refers to the continuous exchange of information where both sender and receiver are involved in the process and take time to communicate messages between each other. However, there are various factors that have both direct and indirect effects of the model, and it's because of the rules and the norms that vary among cultures and people that can influence the communication process. These factors that affect the transactional model are: one, being social context. Society decides the way that people can communicate with each other, and the social context in the communication process is about laws, values, and social norms within a society that governs communication. It also refers to the rules and restrictions that every person must follow and the ones that limit their ability to communicate with another. An example of stated social rules that we just pick up on as we grow older is to greet people with a smile, say thank you when you receive compliments, do not disrespect elders, or apologizing for a mistake. Teachers and parents or grandparents at home try to instill these social rules on kids at an early age. Two, being relational context. The relational context in the communication process refers to manners and previous relationship or interpersonal history. Pre-established values and norms shape the manner of people. If two people met, then the interaction would be different as if they were friends from those who are strangers. It becomes normal to communicate. The type of relationship is also an important factor in deciding about the way one person interacts with another. If you have a new relationship with someone, then you would give more effort to the relationship. For example, a new employee will figure and follow established norms within the company, whereas compared to an employee that has been working there for several years. Three, being cultural context. Cultural context in the communication process refers to the identity and lifestyle of people. It includes numerous aspects like class, nationality, gender, race, ability, and sexual orientation, as well as ethnicity. People of similar cultural backgrounds can communicate more effectively than compared to people of different groups. Cultural identities can change the pattern of communication. Sidelining cultural groups will make people unsure and communication processes will be damaged. It's known that people belonging to a specific cultural group show a tendency of closed mindset towards other cultural groups. The exchange and the response between sender and receivers are affected by factors like mindset and social upbringing, cultural beliefs, moods, and experiences. And it's very important to have an open mindset about other cultural identities with the communication process.
Welcome to an activity about balls.
So we're gonna do an activity today in class. Pretty cool. So what we're gonna do is that two students probably, are going to try to have a conversation. And while this is happening, they can talk about whatever they want, up to them entirely. But while this is happening, there's going to be other students from the class, possibly the professor if he wants to get on it too, are going to throw crumpled up pieces of paper at you two while you try to speak. Don't throw like super hard. We're not trying to injure anyone here, but like the paper in this case is going to represent noise, and the idea is that while you're getting hit with these pieces of paper, you're gonna have a hard time communicating and holding a good conversation. So, good luck. I'm vamping. Vamping.
Is it backwards? Can you see the yeet?
We can see it fine enough.
These are paper crumples because yeet. And what do these paper balls represent?
Interference.
Interference.
Have fun.
So this activity is a good activity and is really important to what we're talking about because it represents the noise or the interference that you can get when you're having a conversation with another person and how distracting that might be. So our noise is represented by these little lightning bolts because lightning's scary and it's loud and hard to ignore sometimes, just like outside interference. Sometimes if people are eating paper balls at your head, it's hard to think about what you're trying to say to the person right in front of you. And sometimes the person right in front of you who's interpreting the message that you're sending to them will get a little confused if you're a little bit distracted and your message will come out weird to them. So say you're having a conversation with one of your good friends. This is you, and you're trying to talk to your friend. Your friend's name is Bob. If you're trying to tell Bob about something really cool that you did today, but say you're thinking about food and how hungry you are, that is one example of a type of interference that might distract you from getting a clear message across to your friend Bob. Another thing that could affect the way that you are presenting a message to your friend Bob are outside noises and stuff. Sometimes noises can distract you and like make you look away or make you lose your thought process completely, train of thought. This is our friend, Professor Tommy. Where and this is Buddy. Sometimes if we're sitting in class trying to listen to our friend Tommy teach us about the magic of communication in the classroom, or classroom to classroom, it's really easy to get distracted because of how dang cute Buddy is. Buddy can be an example of interference. Because when Dr. Tommy is trying to have a conversation with you in the class, you might be thinking, dang, Buddy's a really cute dog. And sometimes it's hard to focus.
While there are great things about the transactional model of communication, there are also a few criticisms towards the model as well. One being misunderstanding. Feedback is a vital element in the interpersonal communication model and provides the opportunity to clear any misconception. Without a verbal response between the sender and receiver in the model, it is impossible to determine whether the receiver of the information has received the message as intended by the sender. There's also the fact that there is a lot of unnecessary noise. Communication is simultaneous in the transactional model, and it results in a lot of unnecessary noise.
Wow, Laura, what does this mean?
That the transactional model of communication is good.
Why?
The transactional model is a good thing to know because it will improve your communication competence by allowing you to understand
Wow.
that a lot is happening when you're trying to talk to someone. And you should respect that. There's a lot of moving parts. And knowing what those parts are can help you to keep them in mind as you're trying to talk to someone and to maneuver around the interference and kind of work with pick the right channel, etc.
Yay! Knowing the transactional model can also improve your classroom communication competence for my future teachers out there.
At this point in the lesson, you should understand the transactional model of communication, all of its moving parts and its benefits, and why we have it.
Now think back on your day-to-day. What types of interference in your conversations have you encountered most today?
What types of channels do you use the most often?
Do you text your friends a lot, or do you actually have face-to-face conversations? Because that's happening less and less because our generation is whack.
Think of your last breakup.
I don't wanna.
What channels did you what channels were used and why? Do you think that was an effective use of that specific channel? Probably not, because you got dumped.
Were you a bad person? Did you text your now ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that you were breaking up, or did you talk to them face to face like a real man?